Hi, it's Katrina. The ancient apocalypse is real. Humanity has already wiped itself out once from nuclear war, according to a shocking new discovery. Is it going to happen again? Get ready to step off the well-trodden path of history because today we are diving into some of the most truly bizarre ancient mysteries that still baffle researchers and make you wonder, what in the world was really going on back then? We're going over a lot today, including a terrifying monster from Japan, secrets from the stars, and a very disturbing mass grave. So grab your magnifying glass and let's get into it. Ancient atomic war. All right, when you think ancient warfare, what do you think of? Swords, shields, maybe a few chariots? Okay, now toss that out the window, because what if I told you that there is evidence, serious evidence, that ancient battles looked more like a scene from a post-apocalyptic movie? We are talking weapons so powerful they could vaporize stone. I mean, just gone. Landscapes scarred by heat so intense it's almost unimaginable. Sounds like science fiction, right? Something out of a bad B-movie? Except, maybe it's not. Maybe the proof is right there, scattered across the globe, hidden in plain sight, in the ruins of civilizations now long gone. Imagine this. You're in a busy marketplace in an ancient city thousands of years ago. You're negotiating with the vendor, trying to get some spices or something. Why can't this guy just cut you some slack? You're here every week. Doesn't loyal customer mean anything? Suddenly, the entire square goes quiet. You look up, and on the horizon, a mushroom cloud is blooming. The air is thick, heavy. Then, without warning, the sky tears open. Not a storm, not a fire, but a blinding, all-consuming light, followed by a shockwave that flattens everything for miles. A silent, terrifying explosion that turns stone to glass. That's not a fantasy. That's what some researchers believe happened about 4,500 years ago, based on some very strange discoveries. Now, I know what you're thinking. Nukes in ancient times? Impossible! There is no ancient version of Call of Duty, right? But stick with me here, because there is some seriously strange evidence that points to all-out war, fought with weapons we can barely comprehend, way before anyone even dreamed up a steam engine. And the place to start? The Mahabharata. The Mahabharata is the great Sanskrit epic that makes Game of Thrones look like a quiet weekend at grandma's house. Some might think of it as the ancient Indian version of the Bible. This text includes descriptions of warfare that sound suspiciously like nuclear war. And I'm not talking vague stuff. I'm talking passages that describe explosions brighter than 1,000 suns. I'm talking charred bodies that were unrecognizable after the blast. Survivors losing their hair, their fingernails. Sound familiar? Yeah, it sounds very much like symptoms of radiation poisoning. It reads like someone describing the aftermath of a nuclear blast. But the proof isn't just in the text, it's also in the pudding. Mohenjo-daro, an ancient city in modern-day Pakistan, was built around 2500 BC and rediscovered in the 1920s. Archaeologists were digging around, and what did they find? 44 skeletons sprawled out in the streets. Not buried, just there, spread out like they were in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. And there were rocks, clay vessels, all fused together, melted, by heat that reached 2,700 degrees Fahrenheit. That is hot. Researcher David Davenport even identified a 50-yard wide blast zone at the site, where everything was essentially vaporized. Russian author A. Gorbovsky noted that one of the skeletons had over 50 times the normal radiation levels. That's not, I stood too close to the microwave radiation. That's, I just walked out of Chernobyl in 1986 levels. Of course, not everyone is sold on this theory of ancient nuclear war. Some more mainstream archaeologists say the skeletons were just part of a sloppy mass grave, maybe from a plague or a bad potluck dinner gone wrong. They also point out that if there really had been a nuclear explosion, those flimsy mud brick buildings wouldn't have survived, but some of them are still standing. Is this all one big ancient mystery, or are some people seeing what they want to see? Was there a nuclear war? If so, who fought it? How would a nuclear explosion have been possible so long ago? Or was it something else? Something otherworldly? Ancient cocaine brain. Cocaine in 17th century Italy? That is not what I was expecting to tell you about today. And it gets weirder. 2 people dying in a hospital cemetery with brains holding a secret. Evidence they were using the drug to self-medicate. Researchers found traces of cocaine in these people's brains from 400 years ago. What were they treating? And how did it get there centuries before we thought it existed in Europe? Life was tough for the people of Milan in the 17th century. If you had been alive back then, you'd have probably suffered from plague paranoia, questionable hygiene habits, and maybe even been accused of witchcraft. If you got sick 400 years ago in Italy, you headed to your local healer. And what did they give you for your sickness? After a few pokes and prods, you'd find yourself chewing on some imported South American shrubbery. Suddenly, you feel kind of better. Hey, life's not so bad. It's because your healer just gave you some coca. In a shocking new study from the University of Milan, 2 people buried in a hospital cemetery around 400 years ago had cocaine in their brain tissue. Coke wasn't just the drink of choice in the 1980s. It may have been the brain buzz of the 1600s. Obviously in a different form than we think of today. It wasn't the chemical white powder, but the coca leaves used by the Andean indigenous people in Peru and Bolivia. But all the way in Milan? This is a mystery that no one ever realized needed solving. How much coca were people on 400 years ago? And how the heck did they get it? Researchers found not just 1, but 3 cocaine-related molecules in the brains of these long-gone party people. According to lead researcher Gaia Giordano, these 2 likely got their fix shortly before dying. Obviously, this wasn't the dancing plague, at least not this time. The study suggests it was possibly used medicinally, because, let's face it, medicine back then was little more than throw herbs at it and pray. Until now, historians thought coca plants didn't make it to Europe until the 1800s. You know, when everyone was getting their daguerreotype done and sending telegrams. But this new evidence blows that timeline out of the water by 2 entire centuries. Milan in the 1600s was under Spanish rule, and Spain had some very good ships. It's very likely that some cheeky sailor that went to the Americas snuck coca leaves into Milan, tucked between the cinnamon sticks and the plundered gold, and they probably sold it for a pretty penny too. Even back then, it was a good way to make a fortune quickly. So someone went to America, found the powerful coca leaves, and brought them back to Italy. And to be clear, this wasn't part of hospital treatment records. Just like now, this type of drug was off the record. No Dr. Giovanni's weekly wellness coca leaf cleanse. Either someone was playing freelance pharmacist, or the dearly departed were just really into alternative medicine. Very into it. What researchers are eager to learn now is how widespread this was. Were there only a few people using this stuff in Italy, or was coca making its way across Europe in massive amounts? And now for a quick break, because it's shoutout time! I want to give a big thank you to Edward Pekorski and Rye Simeon for supporting this channel. Thanks so much for watching and spending time with me today. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe for more videos about bizarre ancient mysteries. We have a lot. Japan's starving skeleton monster. Meet the hangriest monster in history, Japan's Gashadokuro, aka the starving skeleton. He is a massive 15 times bigger than you ghost skeleton with a serious grudge, a taste for blood, and zero chill. And he's invisible until he's chomping your head off. Sweet dreams, my friends. Let me set the scene a little more. Hundreds of people die in battle or starve to death with no proper burials, lots of rage and unfinished business. You know how the story goes. But then their bones merge into one gigantic, cursed skeleton powered by pure fury. That's the Gashadokuro in a huge skeletal nutshell. When it moves, its bones rattle like an earthquake with a tambourine problem. If your ears start ringing late at night in the middle of nowhere, bad news. That's your warning bell that the skeleton monster is coming. You better run. It's unlikely that such a monster ever truly existed, but let's explore the legend anyway, because it's awesome. Japan has some of the coolest lore that needs to be discussed more, but it's kind of violent. The legend of Gashadokuro goes back over 1,000 years to a rebellious samurai named Taira no Masakado. He tried to start his own little empire and got his head handed to him for it. Literally. Then his daughter, Princess Takiyasha, a mighty sorceress, summoned a giant skeleton to go full revenge mode on the people who murdered her dad. This story was immortalized in a famous Japanese woodblock print by Utagawa Kuniyoshi called Takiyasha the Witch and the Skeleton Spectre. It is vintage nightmare fuel, and the Gashadokuro's first glam shot. The Gashadokuro is considered a yokai, a supernatural creature. But Japan doesn't just have ghosts and demons, it has different types. The giant skeleton is more specifically known as a yurei, which is an angry ghost type of supernatural creature. While no one has physically seen the Gashadokuro because, well, that would be insane, you may have seen one in a video game or a movie without even knowing it. Did you ever play Cuphead? Remember the creepy train skeleton? Totally inspired by Gashadokuro. Or what about Dark Souls? Gashadokuro vibes everywhere. For Studio Ghibli fans, Pompoko is a Gashadokuro too. So, while the earth may not tremble with skeletal footsteps, the chilling legend of the Gashadokuro continues to inspire, proving that even the hangriest of monsters can leave a lasting and delightfully terrifying mark on our imaginations. The mythical Cave of Giants. Tucked away on the uninhabited Scottish island of Staffa is a cave that looks like it belongs in another realm. Fingles Cave doesn't just look unreal, it feels like something ancient and magical is still echoing inside its basalt walls. Standing 72 feet tall and 270 feet deep, its towering hexagonal columns rise like a natural cathedral built not by hands, but by fire and time. The island itself is tiny, yet this cave is its heartbeat. Its otherworldly design comes from volcanic lava that cooled just slowly enough to form perfect six-sided pillars, identical to those found at the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland. Now get this. Science says the Giant's Causeway and Fingles Cave were once connected by a massive lava flow. The lava flow formed a bridge between Northern Ireland and Scotland. That's what science says, but legend has another story to tell. Local lore claims it was giants who built the bridge, not Mother Nature. One story claims the cave was part of a colossal bridge built by the giant Finn McCool. He was an Irish giant with a score to settle across the sea. He crafted a path to Scotland to face off with his rival, Benandonner. Benandonner ended up being so afraid of Finn McCool that he smashed the bridge to avoid fighting him. The proof of this story is in the fact that on both ends of the mythical causeway are bizarre, blocky landscapes. Fingles Cave didn't get its name from this legend, though. When Irish Gaels migrated to Scotland, they brought with them tales of a warrior poet named Fingal and his son Oisin, a hero of countless Gaelic epics. They named the cave after the warrior, and the name stuck. Then, 18th century poet James Macpherson published what he claimed were translations of ancient songs of Fingal. Romantic, heroic, maybe even fabricated, but captivating enough to turn the cave into a muse. Artists and thinkers were drawn to it like moths to a Celtic flame. Sir Walter Scott called it one of the most extraordinary places he'd ever seen. Composer Felix Mendelssohn famously visited Fingles Cave and emerged with a haunting musical tribute known as the Hebrides Overture, rife with echoes of waves and myth. Whether you believe in giants or not, Fingles Cave is magical. Step inside yourself to find out and leave inspired. The sea sings, the rocks rise in harmony, and somewhere, maybe, the echo of a giant's footsteps still lingers. Secrets of a cemetery. What cemetery doesn't have secrets? Don't worry, this one's even creepier than most. The golden sun rises over the Aegean Sea, casting a soft glow on the rugged island of Boscada, once known as the legendary Tenedos. Birds are chirping, waves gently lap the shore, and archaeologists are elbow deep in 2,700-year-old dirt. What are these archaeologists doing? Just pulling out ancient baby jars like they're unboxing some cursed historical Happy Meals. What they found on this remote Mediterranean island is a children's cemetery from nearly 3,000 years ago, and it's got more twists than a Greek tragedy. The dig is led by the ever-dedicated Professor Turan Takoglu. If the name Tenedos rings a bell, you must be a fan of ancient literature. This island got name-dropped in both the Iliad and the Aeneid. According to the poet Virgil, it was where the sneaky Greeks parked their ships during the Trojan War to make the Trojans think they had given up. Then came the infamous Trojan horse delivery. Classic scam. All these eons later, this little island is back in the spotlight. And let's just say the ancient locals didn't skimp on variety. The newly found cemetery revealed a surprising number of different burial types for children. There were pithos tombs, giant clay jars used to bury children. There were also amphora tombs, which amphora were usually used to store wine or olive oil. And the final type are stone masonry tombs, fancy rock condos for the many dearly departed. The disturbing mystery here is that scientists don't know why so many different kinds of tombs were used for the young. And then there's the weirdest grave of all, a pithos tomb inside of a pithos tomb. The rushing nesting dolls of burial practices. What purpose did this unusual burial serve? We may never know the truth, but the whole situation has got archaeologists buzzing. They are also excited about what they found inside the graves. Researchers found a treasure trove of goodies. No, they didn't find gold coins or a level 3 longsword. This isn't an RPG. They found a collection of 6 terracotta figurines. 2 are dancers rocking stylish Phrygian headdresses like they just got back from Coachella. Another is a lyre player caught mid-serenade. The last 3 are mysterious women draped in Eastern-style garb. Experts think they might be followers of Dionysus, the Greek god of wine, partying, and questionable life choices. The artifacts are now in the safe hands of Dr. Selim Yavsan, who cleaned and restored them with more care than your ornery aunt handling fine china. They've been sent to the Troy Museum for further analysis. The team believes the figurines reflect the cultural and spiritual beliefs of the time. The children's graves weren't just places of mourning. They were doorways to the divine. These little statues were likely tributes meant to help the kids party with Dionysus in the afterlife. At the end of the day, these strange burials may be a bit creepy, but they are also a hauntingly beautiful glimpse into how people grieved, celebrated, and remembered 2,700 years ago. Neanderthals ate maggots like candy. Prepare to groan, cringe, and say ew. 2 Neanderthals are sitting around a crackling fire. Let's call one Tom and the other Susan, just for fun. The night is young and the stars are bright, and Tom and Susan are warm and happy and a little hungry. What do? They share a handful of squirming maggots like they're popcorn at movie night. Tom looks over at Susan and grunts approvingly. Yum! Writhing maggots with a hint of rot and a dab of dead squirrel. Sounds kind of gross, right? I mean, it is now. But according to new research, those maggot grubs weren't a last-ditch effort at survival. Maggots were gourmet snacks. For ages, scientists painted Neanderthals as big, burly hunters who lived on meat. They've been depicted in the media and in natural history museums around the world as primitive, carnivorous boneheads. Their love for meat wasn't just a guess. The idea is based on the fact that Neanderthals have been found to contain high nitrogen levels in their bodies, which typically happens when someone eats a lot of meat. Now it looks like the idea of nitrogen levels being connected to meat consumption could be wrong. Leslie Aiello, paleoanthropologist and former head honcho of the Leonard Wren Foundation, says those high nitrogen levels may not have come from devouring mammoth steaks, but from chowing down on maggots. Dr. Melanie Beasley from Purdue University says Neanderthals were likely eating meat that came with bonus protein in the form of fly larvae. Yummy! Nature's own protein sprinkles. Yay! Maggots might be the forgotten superfood that every foodie influencer is about to bring back once they see this video. Decomposing meat and its squirmy sidekicks are rich in nitrogen and fat. There are some indigenous Arctic groups who even preferred meat with a little rot, not just because it seemed to be better for their bodies, but because it tasted better too. Dr. Beasley took this study as far as she dared. She tested nitrogen levels in maggots feeding on decaying human cadavers at the University of Tennessee's Body Farm. You're welcome for that visual. I never knew there was a place called the Body Farm, and now I'm a little disturbed that I can't unknow it. Beasley analyzed 34 cadavers, and she analyzed 389 maggots from blowflies, cheese flies, and black soldier flies. Ugh. Her shocking discovery was that the black soldier fly larvae had nitrogen levels 8 times higher than the meat they were munching on. That's not just a snack. That's a prehistoric protein bomb. Beasley's work gives us a totally new perspective on our ancient cousins. Neanderthals weren't brutish hunters. They were adaptable survivalists, ready to eat whatever nature threw at them. By munching maggots, they were getting all the good stuff to stay strong, healthy, and alert during the savage ice age. If you were starving in sub-zero temperatures, would you nibble a few maggots to survive, or would you perish in the snow like a paleo diva? Let me know in the comments. The Orion Mystery. It's time to talk about one of the strangest coincidences in human history. Or maybe it's not a coincidence at all. Ancient civilizations didn't rise from the dust of the old Earth like scientists say. They came from the stars. Why does the constellation of Orion appear in ancient monuments across the world? Civilizations separated by oceans, languages, and centuries were all obsessed with Orion, each culture pointing to the same group of stars in the sky. It's almost as if they were pointing the way home. Egypt, Babylon, the Maya, the Dogon tribe of Africa, Native Americans, South Americans, everyone was in on the Orion obsession. Specifically, they were interested in Orion's belt and its 3 iconic stars. Do you know what ancient cultures did with those 3 stars? They used them to align their temples, pyramids, and whole cities. Today's scientists call it M42, the Orion Nebula. It's technically a stellar nursery where new stars are born. But ancient humans didn't need the Hubble telescope to know there was something powerful out there. Thousands of years before modern astronomy, they were tracking Orion with the naked eye and building megalithic structures in its honor. But how and why? Maybe the answer is in Egypt. The ancient texts say that Osiris, Egypt's god of the afterlife, came from Orion. His consort, the goddess Isis, came from the nearby star Sirius. Together, they didn't just rule over life and death, they created humanity. The Great Pyramid of Giza lines up exactly with Orion's belt as it appeared over 4,000 years ago in the sky. One of the king's chamber shafts even points directly to Alnitak's position in 2450 BC. Not to mention, the descending passage of the pyramid used to aim at Alpha Draconis, the ancient North Star. Every alignment was intentional. It was cosmic geometry at its finest. The Greeks were doing the same thing. In Greek myth, Orion was a giant hunter placed among the stars by Zeus. In Babylon, Orion was known as Sipazi-Ana, the loyal shepherd of heaven. And according to the Dogon tribe of Mali, Orion and Sirius were more than constellations. They were home. The Dogon speak of Sirius B, a white dwarf star invisible to the naked eye. So how is an invisible star in their ancient lore, seeing as, they couldn't possibly have seen it without a telescope? They not only saw it, they described its density and orbit with shocking accuracy. Modern science didn't even confirm Sirius B's existence until 1970. So how did they know? The Dogon claimed they were taught by sky beings known as Nomol, who descended from Sirius B in a vessel that landed with great noise and wind. Sound like a myth or a memory? You be the judge. Meanwhile, across the ocean in Mesoamerica, you have Teotihuacan, a sprawling ancient city with pyramids also aligned to Orion's belt. That's too big of a coincidence for many people to swallow. Think of how many stars are in the sky. Billions. But civilizations who never met aligned their greatest structures with the same 3 stars. It's as likely as strangers picking the same 3 numbers from 1 to a billion. It would never happen. Something else must explain the Orion fascination. Legend says Mexico's Teotihuacan was built not by humans, but by the Kinametzin, a race of giants who survived a previous world age. Their ruler was Tlaloc, the rain god. Same Orion, same alignment, thousands of years apart. No known connection, and still everyone agreed the stars in Orion's belt were important enough to build entire civilizations around. Why do you think that was? The mystery of Sphinx Mountain. Perched high in the wild beauty of Wyoming's Yellowstone National Park, Sphinx Mountain has long captivated the imaginations of those who venture near. But it's not just the mountain's commanding presence that's mysterious. It's the centuries-old legends and tales woven around it. To truly understand Sphinx Mountain, you must journey back through time to uncover the ancient myths passed down by the Native American tribes who once roamed the land. Their stories reveal how the mountain's dramatic shape and its haunting aura have left an enduring mark on history. Sphinx Mountain remarkably resembles the face of a giant sphinx. Is it another bizarre coincidence of nature, or could the mountain have been transformed by human hands thousands of years ago? Native American tribes who lived nearby, including the Shoshone and the Crow, saw the mountain as more than just rock and earth. To them, it symbolizes strength, mystery, and a deep connection between the land and the cosmos. The tribe's legends tell us that Sphinx Mountain was the site of important spiritual events. Some believed it was the place where ancestor spirits resided, while others felt that the mountain itself was a sacred meeting point between the living and the gods. The real mystery deepens when you consider that Sphinx Mountain might be a reflection of a deeper, universal connection shared by distant cultures. Across the globe, from the ancient Egyptians to the Maya, the figure of the Sphinx was a symbol of knowledge. It often guarded the entrance to something beyond mere mortal comprehension. Like the most famous Sphinx in Egypt, which some legends claim guards the entrance to a forbidden library of books written before Noah's flood. But what you might not know is that the Sphinx is everywhere. Spain, Rome, Greece, Romania, India, Japan, Myanmar. It's everywhere, and even tied in with Masonic architecture and rituals. The Sphinx is not strictly Egyptian. Is it possible that the Native Americans once carved their own Sphinx into this random Wyoming mountain? Its striking resemblance to the Egyptian Sphinx calls to mind the idea of secrets hidden in the rock, waiting to be discovered. The unknown humans of the Green Sahara. Beneath the Sahara's endless, unforgiving sands lies a long hidden tale of ancient human history. Now, in the heart of this vast, inhospitable region, a new discovery offers an unexpected glimpse into the past. What if the Sahara wasn't always a barren desert? What if it was once a lush, vibrant landscape where humans thrived? And what if, buried within its arid soil, was the secret of a previously unknown human lineage? It's all true. Around 7,000 years ago, the Sahara was far from the desert you know today. It was a green Sahara, a paradise filled with lakes, rivers, and vast grasslands. It was a place where ancient humans hunted, herded animals, and lived in thriving communities. As the land changed from green to brown, so too did the people change. A pair of ancient mummies found in the southwestern corner of Libya are the key to a mystery that stretches back thousands of years. These two women belong to a group of humans that have eluded scientists all this time. In a groundbreaking new study, scientists revealed that two mummified women were isolated from other human populations, living at the edge of the Sahara in complete genetic separation from the communities of sub-Saharan Africa at the time. But how could they have remained so isolated in a world that was changing so rapidly? What does this discovery mean for our understanding of human history? The DNA of these mummies tells a remarkable story. While the two women were genetically distinct from every other sub-Saharan population, their lineage also has traces of Neanderthal ancestry. Yet what truly sets them apart is the lack of genetic exchange between the people of the Green Sahara and those living in other parts of Africa. In simple terms, scientists have found a population of humans completely separate from all other humans, but somewhat related to Neanderthals. And they lived in the Sahara while it was green. They don't appear to have vanished until the Sahara became an inhospitable wasteland. Sadly, this mysterious lineage is no longer with us today. The people of the Green Sahara mingled with outside populations, blending their unique genetic heritage with that of others. But their story isn't entirely lost. Pieces of their DNA remain in the genetic makeup of some modern North Africans, offering a subtle yet powerful reminder of a long-lost heritage. The mystery of the Green Sahara is only just beginning. Is that you, Robin Hood? It's about to get dark. We are going underground. Beneath the cobbled streets and historic charm of Nottingham, a forgotten world lurks in the shadows. It's a labyrinth of caves that stretches deep beneath the city, waiting to reveal their secrets. Could these caves hold clues to ancient mysteries, forgotten lives, or long-lost treasures? As new caves are uncovered, the story of Nottingham's underground world becomes even more tantalizing and mysterious. If your ears perked up at hearing Nottingham, I take it you're a fan of Robin Hood. Nestled in the heart of England's East Midlands, Nottingham is indeed the home of the legendary Robin Hood. But what you probably don't know is that beneath the city lies the largest network of caves in the UK, and they are not natural. The mysterious caverns were carved by hand into the soft sandstone bedrock as early as the 9th century. That was when the Vikings were still pillaging European coastlines. What's crazy is that no one knows who carved the caves or what they were used for. Maybe people used them to hide from invaders. Maybe they were used in sacred pagan rituals. The caves are such a great mystery because there are so few clues to figure out the truth. Over time, Nottingham grew above the underground spaces. As the city expanded, many of the cave entrances were sealed off or buried. Plus, the St. Mary's Nottingham Enclosure Act of 1845 put a stop to renting out caves as housing for the poor. I hate to break it to you, but skeezy landlord practices are nothing new. Between the closures and collapses, much of the subterranean world is now lost, but bits and pieces of it are starting to be found. In 2009, Nottingham City Council began its quest to document the city's cave network. At the time, only 425 caves were known. Only 425 caves under your city? That's nothing. As the years passed and the underground world was slowly mapped out by archaeologist Scott Lomax, the number of discovered caves grew, nearly doubling. With each new cave unearthed, the mystery of Nottingham's hidden world deepens. Now there are nearly 900 caves, all made by hand, and no one knows their origin. Scott Lomax believes that with continued exploration, the number of documented caves could surpass 1,000, unlocking even more of Nottingham's subterranean secrets. Lomax's goal is not just to uncover the caves, but to protect them, to ensure that the legacy of Nottingham's underground world is preserved for future generations. These caves are not just tunnels in the earth, they are windows into a world that time has almost forgotten. But that window is still foggy. Could these tunnels have been used by Robin Hood himself? Were they carved by Templars looking to hide holy relics? Why are they missing from written records? What do you think the cave system was used for? Let me know any guesses you have in the comments. And thanks for watching!
Thanks for watching! Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed.
Codpieces. Popular during the Middle Ages, the codpiece was a male accessory that both concealed and drew attention to a man's private area. It was appropriately named, as cod was the Middle English word for both bag and scrotum, according to Lynn Apino, who explained that the original codpiece was nothing more than a triangular cloth that covered the male private parts. No boxer briefs back then! Historian Grace Vickery argued that the earliest codpieces may have served as personal protective equipment of sorts, perhaps intended to shield the privates from syphilis, which was spreading rampantly throughout Europe at the time. Over time, codpieces became bigger and flashier, and as the accessory reached its height around the mid-16th century, it lost pretty much any protective use it once had and became strictly a fashion piece. Codpieces maintained some utilitarian value, however, often serving as storage spaces for coins, jewels, and other precious items, but they were essentially designed to glorify a man's nether region more than protect it, especially at the peak of the fashion piece's popularity. King Henry VIII, who Apino calls the poster boy of codpieces, wore one of the most bulbous and distinctive ones. Weighing more than 2.5 pounds, the accessory was decorated with jewels, making it essentially impossible to ignore. While none of Henry VIII's codpieces remain, some of his conspicuously large accompanying armor pieces survive. Codpieces fell largely out of fashion by 1700, disappearing from both clothing and armor. Obviously, I don't know, but it doesn't seem practical when you're trying to run on the battlefield. The first breath mints. While the ancient Egyptians lacked the sugary diet we're so fond of today, they were far from immune to tooth decay, especially because their foods often contained lots of grit and sand from the stones they used to grind ingredients with. These materials eroded tooth enamel, making teeth vulnerable to infections. And as many of us unfortunately know, along with bad dental health often comes bad breath. Considering this is an issue even in modern times, I'm sure you can imagine that bad breath was certainly a reality back in ancient Egypt, especially in the absence of modern medicine, including dentists and oral surgeons. People with dental problems essentially had no choice but to suffer, as evidenced by the rotten and abscessed teeth scientists have detected in mummies, including the remains of young people. To combat the foul odor of rotting teeth and gums, the ancient Egyptians boiled honey with frankincense, myrrh, and cinnamon into pellets, effectively creating the world's first ever breath mints. The Urumi. With a name that literally translates to curling blade, the Urumi is a sword that hails from southern India. The weapon possibly dates back to somewhere between the 4th and 2nd centuries BC, but it quickly fell out of favor in the region. It survives today among two types of Indian martial arts called Kalari Payattu and Silambam. The Urumi is known for its flexible, whip-like steel blades. Urumis vary in size and in number of blades, with typical blades measuring 3.9 to 5.6 feet long. Some blades are much longer, however, ranging between 9.8 and 16.4 feet long, and most are about an inch wide. And while one Urumi was rumored to have 32 blades, most contained far less. The more blades a weapon had, though, the deadlier it was. But regardless of how many blades an Urumi was equipped with, it was incredibly dangerous and difficult to master. Hazardous not only to the wielder's target, but to the sword's operator themselves, it often took a warrior years to learn how to properly use an Urumi. The weapon's flexible blades are not used for stabbing. The wielder keeps the blades in constant motion for optimal effectiveness against their opponent, furiously swinging it over and around their head and shoulders to achieve the momentum necessary to do serious damage. Using this weapon full force prevents the operator's adversary from daring to go anywhere near them, serving to create a barrier between warriors. Ancient door locks. 6,000 years ago, an ancient Egyptian locksmith created what's believed to be the first ever pin tumbler lock, which involves inserting a key into a hollowed-out bolt and manipulating pins within the mechanism to disengage the lock. If that sounds familiar, perhaps similar to modern-day locks, that's because some of today's locks are built on the same principle, containing what's called a pin and tumbler system. Despite any similarities with modern locks, the ancient Egyptian version of pin tumbler locks were much different from any we're used to. For one, they were much larger, with some being up to 2 feet long. The first ever pin tumbler lock was made entirely out of wood, and it was a quite simple device. Its key was heavy and large and resembled a toothbrush, with wooden pegs that corresponded with holes and pins inside the lock. If you want to know more, check out historyofkeys.com. This is a whole field of study. Sherlock Holmes would be proud. The Romans and Greeks further advanced lock and key technology, creating smaller locks and introducing the use of metals for more secure protection. Many scholars view Greek and Roman locks as less secure than the ancient Egyptian devices that preceded them, claiming that the newer inventions were easier to pick. But Greek and Roman locks had advantages, with some locks being hidden inside doors, and the use of iron and other metals made for stronger devices. Divj Babe Flute. In 1995, archaeologists Ivan Turk and Janez Durjek discovered the world's oldest known instrument, the Divj Babe Flute, in a cave near Cerkno, Slovenia. Estimated to be around 60,000 years old, the 4-holed Paleolithic instrument was created by Neanderthals, who carved it from the femur of a young bear. Despite its name, the Divj Babe Flute is not actually a flute, nor is it a whistle, although it's certainly capable of making music and was probably played in a similar way to the instruments of our more direct ancestors. It was carved for a right-handed musician and has a sharpened mouthpiece, which was crafted from bone and stone tools. To the surprise of researchers, researchers, the instrument is much more capable of playing notes than other Paleolithic flutes found throughout Europe, which early humans created from bird bones. The Divj flute is the only one that is known to have been made by Neanderthals and is 20,000 years older than other known ancient instruments, which is precisely why experts hesitate to officially classify it as a flute. Researchers' views of Neanderthals were profoundly altered by the discovery, which showed that our prehistoric relatives who went extinct around 30,000 years ago had fully developed senses of spirituality and artistic expression. Tersorium. Have you ever wondered how humans got by when it comes to personal hygiene before toilet paper existed? A tersorium, also called a xylospongium or a sponge on a stick, is pretty much what it sounds like. Used by many people in the communal latrines of ancient Rome, this so-called hygienic utensil consisted of a wooden stick with a sea sponge attached to it. If you haven't figured it out on your own yet, people use this device to clean their behinds after going to the bathroom. And yes, everybody shared them, at least according to some researchers. Others believe that tersoriums were used for cleaning the bathrooms rather than the skin itself. The ancient Romans cleaned tersoriums by washing them in buckets filled with water and salt or vinegar. Their methods were ineffective, however, and bacteria spread rampantly throughout the latrines, leading to the widespread transmission of disease. But the tersorium isn't the only way the ancient Romans freshened their backsides. In 2013, researchers looked at some disc-shaped Roman relics that people once thought were game pieces for early games like draughts. But now, those gaming pieces have been reclassified as something more hilarious, as said by Dr. Robert Simmons, and something that people can relate to. These stones were actually an early form of toilet paper used by the ancient Romans. Known as pissoi, all signs point toward these 1 to 4 inch diameter discs being used for wiping after going to the bathroom. An ancient Greek proverb stating 3 stones are enough to wipe one's A bolsters this theory, as well as the recovery of pissoi at ancient Greek and Roman latrines and ceramic paintings of human figures using pissoi for their suspected purpose. Some people even inscribed their pissoi with the names of their enemies, according to the Daily Mail, meaning that every time they went number 2, they would insult someone that they disliked. Dr. Simmons from the Fishbourne Roman Palace Museum says that he hopes the piece will make people smile when they learn what they were used for. Yakchaw. A yakchaw was an ancient dome-shaped refrigerator with a subterranean storage space that was primarily used throughout Persia. It worked as an evaporative cooler. In other words, it cooled its interior through evaporation. Constructed with thick, insulating, heat-resistant mortar called sarouj, yakchaws were used year-round for storing ice and food in the arid desert heat. Persian engineers mastered the technology for accomplishing this by around 400 BC. During the winter, water was channeled into a yakchaw from a nearby aqueduct and subsequently froze within the structure. Heat was guided upward via the building's conical shape and exited the building via openings at the top, while entries at the structure's base allowed cooler air to enter. Thanks to sophisticated engineering, water was diverted into a yakchaw along the north side of the wall, enabling the wall's shadow to cool and freeze the water more quickly. Thousands of years ago, people could enjoy a shaved ice dessert while shopping at the market. It was basically ice cream before refrigerators. Well, actually in the beginning it was more for the wealthy, but even today there is a dessert that has been around for a very long time called Flute, a cold dessert made up of thin cornstarch noodles mixed with semi-frozen syrup made from sugar and rosewater, served with lime juice and ground pistachios. That sounds delicious. A series of surrounding structures called badgirs, made from mud brick, often help to lower temperatures inside a yakchaw by acting like an ancient system of wind towers, catching high breezes and funneling them downward. Some houses also use this method to stay cool, and you can see yakchaws still standing today. Santor. The santor is a percussion-stringed instrument or hammered dulcimer of Iranian or Mesopotamian origin, with the earliest known evidence of its development dating back to 669 BC. It was originally made from tree bark and stones and strung with goat intestines, which were beaten with wooden mallets called midrab. As the instrument spread throughout the Middle East, different areas and countries created their own variations of it. While the Persian santor has 92 strings, others typically contain between 72 and 100 strings, arranged in 2 sets of 9 bridges, totaling 3 octaves, which are fastened against a flat trapezoidal frame. The santor is considered native to Iraq, Syria, India, Pakistan, Turkey, Iran, Greece, and Azerbaijan. During the Middle Ages, Arabs brought the instrument to Europe through North Africa and Spain, and they also introduced the instrument to China. Nowadays, the santor is made from arguably more modern materials than goat intestines, with the left-hand strings being mainly of steel, while the right-hand strings are made of brass or copper. Dental key. key. If you think getting a tooth pulled in modern times is excruciating, just wait until you hear about the dental key. Before we were lucky enough to have the trappings of modern medicine, such as antibiotics and anesthesia, the most important one, dental infections were typically treated by extracting the affected tooth. Easy peasy, except a lot could go wrong. Extraction instruments date back several centuries at least, with one called the dental key first being mentioned in 1742, although its use likely began around 1730. Modeled after a door key, the dental key was inserted into a patient's mouth horizontally before being used to clamp down on the infected tooth. From there, the surgeon rotated the instrument to loosen the tooth, freeing the patient from the infection, while also often inadvertently causing jaw fractures and soft tissue damage. The dental key was used into the 20th century, and its design evolved over time. It became obsolete starting toward the end of the 19th century with the introduction of forceps, although the torturous tool saw a brief revival later in the 20th century with an instrument called the Dimpel extractor. While forceps might look scary, they are actually a much more efficient and less damaging tool. Automatic doors in ancient Greece. Believe it or not, automatic doors originated in ancient Greece, though they were far from practical. Greek mathematician Heron of Alexandria developed an automatic door system based on ropes and pulleys, activated by water that was pumped from brass vessels into a second set of vats by a large fire, thereby opening the doors. It was more or less an early hydraulic system, and it was far from efficient, making it less commonly used than today's automatic doors, which are everywhere. Opening doors automatically in ancient Greece likely involved an hours-long process that was difficult to stop once it was in motion, according to interesting engineering. The Greeks probably used sliding doors to add mystic qualities to temples, where the altar's fire would be channeled through a tube into the vats of water that powered the doors. Closing the doors more or less involved the opposite of what was required to open them. The fire would burn out, causing the air to contract, the water to siphon back into its original vats, and the doors to close. Back then, this would have been a very impressive feat and would have really impacted people's religious experience. Male member torture. Throughout certain historical periods and in certain cultures, masturbation was looked down upon as a sinful or dirty habit. Naturally, somewhere along the line, someone decided it was necessary to invent an anti-masturbation device designed to stop those who apparently couldn't stop themselves from indulging in some self-love. During the Victorian era, many doctors considered masturbation to be a drain on a man's energy and well-being that could ultimately lead to death. It became increasingly mainstream to believe that masturbation, aka the solitary vice, could lead to mental and physical disorders, including insanity, historian Dr. John Wolfe told News.com Australia. The time period marked the advent of numerous devices that could be likened to torture chambers, including one from the 1880s, which kept a man's member armored while generously providing a hole through which to urinate. If you think that sounds uncomfortable, imagine wearing the jogum, a spiked ring that was fitted around the base of your private parts to deter erections by causing pain. But history shows that these bizarre tools were ineffective, as evidenced by the plethora of pornography that was produced throughout the Victorian era. Thanks for watching! Would you like to learn more about fascinating ancient inventions? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time! Bye!